Hi, I'm Jeanne Fiorini. Thanks for joining the Tarot Tip series. There were no questions or comments or issues that people presented regarding the Celtic layout series. So we're going to move on to another area of concern that I have had a request to do a tarot tip about, and that is the court cards. Sometimes they're called the personality cards or the pips or the court cards, and they tend to be among the most problematic aspects, one of the most problematic aspects of the tarot deck. There's a couple reasons for that. They can mean very many different things. They can depict people who are in your literal environment, people who are in your life, your mother, your sister, your coworker, your child. It could be anyone who is in your external world. They also can be, and sometimes at the same time, be representing somebody who you don't know, but who's an iconic figure, or who is somebody out in the culture who is either inspiring or interesting to you. Right now I'm very, what's the word? I think Lady Gaga is fabulous. If there's something about her, I don't know her personally, of course, but if there's something about her that I find interesting and attractive, she would be a Queen of Wands figure. If there's something about her that I maybe need to emulate, or an aspect of her that might be interesting to draw into my own life. That's the way sometimes the court cards can appear. The court cards can represent parts of our personality with which we are identified. If you think of yourself as a thinker, somebody who moves through their life intellectually and sort of reasonably, then you might be identified with the King of Swords. If you're more of a feeler and a go with the flow kind of a person, you might be identified more with the Knight of Cups. The other way that the personality cards can appear in a reading is to point out aspects of ourselves which need to be developed, parts of ourselves that are underutilized. Maybe our sensitivity, maybe our intellect needs to be brought to the surface. If that's not something we're comfortable with, we might see a sword card come up in a reading and say, here's something that you need to develop and put in your repertoire of potential reactions to a certain situation. I like to think of the personality cards, the court cards in general, as attitudes, approaches to situations, ways of dealing with things. In psychosynthesis, we used to call this quality of a person the subpersonality. Maybe not our main identification, but aspects or attributes of ourselves that we can pull up in given situations to help us move through them effectively. So let's go take a look at the table and talk a little bit more about the court cards. Okay, here are the 16 personality cards. I like to think of them as a family, that the pages are the children, the knights are the teenagers, the queens are the adults that deal with the element in a certain way, and the kings are also adults that deal with the element in a different way from the queens. Here are some real clear, succinct points to remember about the court cards. The first thing is that they stay true to their element. In other words, they live and breathe and die by the nature of the suit that they represent. So Pentacles, anybody who shows up in Pentacles cares about the practical, the grounded, the concrete part of any issue. By contrast, the Wands, anybody who's in the Wand suit represents the challenge of something, the creativity of something, the dynamic, self-expressive quality of something. So the personality cards stay true to their element. part of the thing that makes the court cards, the personality cards, tricky is that they express energies, but they're not gender specific and they're not age specific. So if I pull the Page of Swords, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm talking about a child. If I pull the Queen of Cups, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm talking about a woman. It means that I'm talking about somebody who has Queen of Cups qualities or who is reacting to a certain situation in a Queen of Cups way. So it can be very tricky to look at the cards and not get caught up in either the age of the person on the card or the gender of the person on the card. The court cards do, however, reflect levels of experience with a certain element. The pages as childlike energies are the least mature. The knights like to be adventurous about their element. The queens are the channelers or the I like to think of the queens as sitting on a well, and whatever element they're on in is the well upon which they sit. So they're the champions of the element. They are the conduits for whatever the element is. They are the vehicle through which the element can be fully expressed, the queens. The kings are the masters. The kings are the attribute that likes to have control over the element, have vision with the element, and be dynamically and personally creative with the element. So different levels of experience with their elements. Having said that, we have to be very careful, as with all cards, to remember that there is no such thing as a good card or a bad card. There is no such thing as a negative personality card. There might be a negative way to approach a situation, but that doesn't mean that the card is intrinsically a good or a bad card. Now, aside from all of that, one of really the simplest ways to get a handle on what's happening with the personality cards is to pay attention to how they face. For instance, a classic example I like to use, we're going to get rid of some of these other cards here. Let's say for whatever reason, you've pulled the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Cups. Now, in how I have them placed on the table, even though they have very different energies, the Queen of Swords is very decisive, mentally driven, highly idealistic, and the Queen of Cups really only cares about how she feels about something. So that's a heart and head duality, potentially. If those two cards are facing each other, we might get the idea that those two things are in harmony, that they're trying to work together. It's very clearly a different situation when we look at those cards like that. There we really get the feeling that there's a standoff, that those two parts, either if they're two different people in the world or two different parts of yourself, they are not getting along, they are not seeing eye to eye. And there's a definite kind of stubbornness about the way of perceiving the world that each one of them holds. So a real simple key about dealing with the personality cards, aside from their meanings, is to simply take a look at what are the pictures showing me. How is the person sitting in the card? Are they looking at me? Are they looking at other cards in the deck? Are they looking away from other cards in the deck? Are they more self-motivated? Are they looking outward in the world? Are they introspective? All of these things can give you a clue about what the attitude or the personality is trying to convey in a reading. The last point that I'd like to make about the personality cards is a point that is true about any reading that you're going to do, and that is how you phrase your question is so important. How you phrase your question or pose your query is going to give you a format or a context within which your question will be answered. So rather than willy-nilly pulling out a card, what's going on with so-and-so, and getting, especially a personality card that can be so many different things, it's really wise to phrase your query succinctly. So some real basic ways to do that would be to pull out your 16 personality cards and be thinking of a situation that you're needing or wanting a successful resolution to, and asking the question, what would be my best approach to this situation? What aspect, attribute is really going to help me be successful with this situation? At the same time, you might want to pull out a card for what part of me might be hindering process. What attitude, attribute, personal tendency, little quirk might I have or be contributing to the situation, which is not helping, which is creating more problems, creating blocks for me. So again, that help or hinder is a very useful, very simple 2-card layout that gives you lots of information. That's something that I've mentioned in my Spreads and Layouts book. There's a couple of different ways to deal with personality cards in there as well. So I hope that's been helpful. Send along your suggestions for things that you might like to see addressed in the Tarot Tip series, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.